In rural France, Vision he takes care of her dead husband's locust farm all day and sometimes at night too. She has put everything into it because it is her only source of livelihood and she must feed her two kids, Laura and Gaston. The locusts are farmed for protein, but lately very nice business has been experiencing a decline because the locusts won't reproduce in large numbers and many of them die quickly. Vision he often seeks help in a locust farmer forum, but none of the suggestions have produced any significant results. Virginia is so obsessed with a business that she often doesn't have time for her kids. When Gaston needs to be taken to soccer practice, she makes Laura take them instead. Laura hates this not only because her mother should spend time with them, but also because being in public makes her the target of dumb teenagers that make fun of her for living with bugs. One afternoon, Vision he has visited by a prospective customer who wants to buy her locusts in large quantities as raw materials for snacks. However, Vision he only has 4 of the 6 crates she promised, so the man demands a discount. Such a price is impossible for Visually, because she is already selling the locusts incredibly cheaply, so she turns him down. Afterward, Vision he takes Laura with her to find fresh grass to feed the locusts. Laura asks about the client and is very sad to hear the family is short on money again, making her hate for the locust farm grow. Later, Vision he does a lot of thinking and ends up calling her friend Corinne, who works as a wine farmer, to borrow money from him. Thankfully, Karim agrees to help and keep the secret. But as soon as Vision he hangs up, Corinne calls some friends to see if they would consider buying Vision these products. The next day, Laura sees a video uploaded by one of her classmates, in which they make fun of Laura and her family for racing disgusting bugs, feeding her hate for the farm. Meanwhile, Gaston is raising some locusts of his own in a terrarium. When he accidentally injures his finger, one of his locusts lands on the wound to feed on it. In the afternoon, Vision he takes her children with her to the city, where she offers her locust snack products to various grocery stores. While Laura is waiting in the car, she sees the guy that posted that video to embarrass her. Laura goes to him and starts a fight, which results in the boy easily punching Laura in the face. Before it can get worse, Vision he shows up and takes Laura away. When they go home, Virginie argues with Laura about her attitude, not listening to her when she explains she feels like a freak in front of others. Afterward, Vision he gets a call from a client that wants to buy a large amount of locusts, but he doesn't offer a very good price. So Vision he promises to think about it. Then she goes to check on Laura, and noticing the state she is in, she decides she has to do something. She tells her daughter that she'll sell everything to the client that just called, so they can move out and start a new life, which makes Laura very happy. The next day at school, Vision he approaches the guy from the video to tell him soon she'll be gone and won't see his ugly face anymore. Moments later, the client comes to the farm to finish the deal, but he becomes extremely disappointed when he notices that Vision is locusts or very thin and lowers the price to a really low number. This makes Vision he furious, and she immediately pushes the crates out of the guy's car, refusing to sell. Her mood gets worse when the man says he only came because Karim asked him to. In Vision he realizes people have been buying from her out of pity, not being able to handle the situation anymore. Vision he goes to the locust tent and begins destroying the whole place with unleashed fury. Suddenly she slips and falls, getting hurt and falling unconscious. When she finally wakes up, she is terrified to find the locust feeding on the blood from her wound and quickly runs out. Moments later, the neighbor comes to pick up his dog, who likes to sneak around often. Meanwhile, Vision he meets with Karim and tells him she doesn't want his pity. When he asks about the wound on her arm, she lies about it and leaves. When she returns to the farm, he hears the locusts being unconventionally loud. She goes to check on them and discovers that the locusts have become more energetic, which leaves Vision he thinking about the cause. The next morning, the locusts continue to be extremely loud, and she can't help wondering if they are behaving like this because they've tasted blood. Vision he tests her theory by removing the bandage on her arm and inserting it into the cage, where the locusts immediately start swarming her wound. Virginie withstands the pain for the sake of science, and afterward she hides in the bathroom to remove all the locust parts from her wound. That night, even Gaston can hear how loud the locusts were being from inside the house. The following morning, Vision he puts on special protective clothing before entering the cage, wanting to avoid another feeding session. She is surprised to discover that the locusts have not only grown for fat, but they also are multiplying fast in big numbers. Excited by finally seeing her project flourish, He starts building new tents with Dream's help. When Laura sees this, she becomes very upset because if her mother is developing the business instead of selling, it means that she lied and they won't be leaving. On the other hand, Gaston is excited to see Locusts so big and asked his mom for the secret, but Vision he tells him she's fed them parsley. She allows Gaston to take a few of these locusts for his own collection. But when he leaves a box with one of them on the table during dinner, Laura smashes it with her fist and accuses her mother of lying. An argument ensues, and when Vision he explains she has debts to pay, Laura just leaves the table. Meanwhile, and Gaston by various, the new locusts eat the older ones to make sure everything runs smoothly. Version he returns to the cage in the evening and offers her blood to the locusts to keep on improving their quality. Sitting there surrounded by bugs, leaves her in a shaken state that a bath won't solve. So afterward she goes to see Karim, who was having trouble with his own harvest, to share the trouble that comes with being a farmer. By the time the locusts are ready to harvest, the final result is very fresh and bounce awful. So Version he goes back to the client to offer her product again. This time the man is happy to buy at a reasonable price. And once more in the future, back on the farm, the neighbor watches how more tents keep on appearing, not sure what to think, since it's impossible to continuously feed the locusts with her own blood. Vision he begins buying fresh blood bottles from the butcher shop that they delivered directly to the farm. She mixes the blood with jelly flour to make the blood turn into solid clots, and then she goes around the cages leaving a clot in each one for the locust to feast. The locusts multiply so fast that the noise becomes unbearable, and Laura has to play the music incredibly loud in her headphones to stop hearing a bugs. She continues to help her mother with a business, but she also notices that Vision he enters the tents every night, and this growth obsession is starting to worry her. One afternoon, one of Laura's friends comes to visit her, but when he wonders if she isn't moving away after all, Laura feels like he's rubbing salt in the wound. Overwhelmed with anger and extremely annoyed by the constant locust noise, Laura finally snaps. She rushes into one of the tents, and her frustration by tearing apart some of the cages and cutting one of the tent's walls. Then he and her friend return to the house without talking about it. Meanwhile, Gaston is waiting at the truck with his pet goat and is surprised to see locusts on the window. Suddenly a huge swarm of locusts flies out of the tent and rushes towards him. He immediately hides under the seat, and as the truck shakes he yells goat's name while the leash slips away. Soon the locusts are gone, and Gaston comes out to find his goat has disappeared. At that moment Vision he comes back from a trip to town, and Gaston quickly runs to her crying hysterically because as good as disappeared. After checking the tent and telling the kids to stay inside, Vision he goes out to investigate, only to discover the goat is dead and the locusts are feeding on it. She moves the carcass to a safe place and then returns home, but she tells Gaston she didn't find anything. While Gaston cries in his room, Virginie schools Laura for her behavior, dragging her to a room by force. Afterward, Virgin he keeps up the lie by taking Gaston in the truck to look for the goat. Desperate to repair her relationship with her kids, Vision he decides to take them to the beach, and they have some fun together. To distract Gaston from the loss of his goat, she gives them permission to go to soccer camp. Even under this scorching sun, Vision he doesn't swim with her kids and keeps her clothes on to hide the scar she's got from feeding the locusts. But Laura still notices. When they return home, Karim is waiting with a scooter, which is very nice gift for Laura. Afterward, Karim and Virginie share some wine and start kissing. But when Karim tries to raise her, he freaks out and tells him to leave. A few days later, Virginie contacts the butcher shop to get more fresh blood, but they discovered she doesn't have a license and won't sell to her anymore. Next, she tries a cow farm, but they have a waiting list, and she can't wait that long. However, this doesn't stop her from expanding the farm more, and she almost cuts down Gaston's favorite tree to do so, but her son convinces her to stop. With no blood suppliers, Vision he starts using transfusion equipment to get her own blood for the locusts, which makes her weak. The next day, Karim comes to visit her, yet Vision he is rude to him because she's afraid to get caught, so she tells him not to come without calling first. Later in the evening, Vision he finds the neighbor's dog wandering around her farm. Desperate to keep her harvest bountiful, she decides to feed the dog to the locusts. In the house, the locusts begin multiplying to the point they're coming out of the sink and flooding the by various, but this just turns out to be Gaston's nightmare. The next morning, Vision he has to clean all the bloodstains left by the dog pretty quickly because more clients are coming to buy big quantities of locusts, which she can now cover. Later in the middle of the night, Laura goes to kill a neighbor's farm animal and brings it over to feed the locusts. The next day Vera genius a week that she won't leave the bed, so is Laura, who must drop gassed on a camp. When she comes back she looks for her mom and is shocked to find lots of clothes on the floor stained with blood. Worried and confused, Laura rushes to the farm and encounters a disturbing scene. Virginia's only wearing underwear and letting the locust cover her body while she cries in pain. A terrified Laura immediately runs back to the house, locks herself in the bathroom and ignores her mother calling her name while she texts Karim asking him to come over immediately. By the time Karim arrives, Vision he is working as if nothing happened. Karim tries to ask how she is, but Vision he gives vague answers and tries to avoid it. However, she's feeling very weak and can barely walk, almost on the edge of fainting. Karim catches her right before she falls and decides to take Virginie and Laura to his house to have dinner together and watch a movie. When Laura is alone in the kitchen crying, Karim goes to ask her what's going on and she tells him to check the cages, but before she can explain more, Virginie and erupts them and accuses Laura of meddling. Karim asked her to treat the girl better, but Vision he decides to leave. Meanwhile, the neighbor comes to the farm looking for his dog. He hears that the locusts are making way more noise than usual and enters the tent where he has devastated to find the dog's collar and too many locusts on the roof. Afterward, Karim brings the women home, but instead of leaving, he decides to check the mystery Laura referred to. When he enters the tent, he's shocked to discover that the locusts have killed the neighbor and are currently eating him. Terrified and disturbed, Karim quickly takes action by starting a fire to burn down all the tents with the locusts in them. At that moment, Vision he sees the fire and immediately runs outside to try to put it out. Karim tries to stop her, but Vision he pushes him away as a huge locust swarm leaves the tent and comes after him. Karim tries running into the house only for the locust to follow him, blocking the window. Virginia is trying to put the fire out when scream and runs inside to where she finds Karim's dead body being eaten by the locusts. Laura isn't in the house. She is actually fled into the woods to avoid the swarm that is going after her. Eventually she reaches the lake and enters the water while using an overturned boat to protect yourself. However, the swarm of locusts quickly covers the boat and begins pushing it into the lake in order to drown Laura. At that moment, Virginia arrives and she's so desperate to save her daughter that she covers her face with her own blood to lower the locusts. Her plan works and soon the locusts cover her body to feet. When Laura stops hearing the locusts above her, she swims out from underneath the boat and sees her mother being attacked by the locusts, who don't let go until Virginie he sinks in the water. As the bugs fly away, Laura swims towards her injured mother to cradle her in her arms. The women embrace each other and watch the swarm dissipate as the sun rises on the horizon. Thanks for watching this video.